Let's talk gambling a little bit here, Mike. Now, this comes from, somebody who's a league employee, me, that I every year, every summer, we get nonstop emails, we get nonstop human resources videos that we are required to view, documents to, e-sign and stuff like that about the gambling policy in the NFL. So this may sound naive or what have you, but you are clearly on this story and talking to people who are talking to players and things like that. How do the players, young players, not know you can't gamble on your team or any team in the NFL? How is this like we didn't know, so we shouldn't be held as accountable as we're being held to? It strains credulity for me, Mike. So I guess explain it to me.
There's two levels to this. I think that any player out there should realize with nothing more than a 5-second conversation, never bet on anything related to the NFL in any way, shape, or form, period, ever, boom. Where it becomes problematic and where it's become very confusing, Rich, for you and all the other non-players, you can't bet on any sports at all, ever. No March Madness brackets. I've heard of people getting summarily fired for being involved in for-pay March Madness brackets, non-players. Fantasy football, nothing more than $250 prize for the full season. Anything more than that, you're gone, no questions asked. And I've heard there have been plenty of employees, non-players, who get fired by the league, by the teams, and we don't know about it because we don't tune in to a game, and where is that person?
Right.
So they're very aggressive about the rule for non-players that you can't engage in any gambling on any sport at any time. Why, Rich? Why? Do you think that the NFL, which has full control over the gambling policy as it relates to players, the union has conceded this isn't part of the CBA. The NFL, in its power to control the integrity of the game, has the ability to create this policy, and we have nothing to do with it. Why does the NFL let players gamble on any sports? Why not just have players under the same rules as everyone else? Wouldn't it be a lot easier to explain it to everyone if the rule was you can't bet on any sports at any time, any place? That would clear up so much of this confusion, because I think that's where it comes from. I think guys like Jameson Williams didn't know that if you stand outside the Detroit Lions facility on the street, you can pull up your phone and hit the FanDuel app and bet on NBA basketball, but the moment you walk through the door, it's an affront to the integrity of the game and you're suspended 6 games. That makes no sense. Why is that rule in place? Just treat the players like the non-players.
And from what you're talking about, with folks who either talking to players or folks who represent the players, I mean, is this like a problem collegiately where they just do whatever, they gamble and then they come to the pros and they're not familiar with the new rules? Is that part of it too? I'm just wondering how prevalent this is. Certainly, since part of your reporting is you heard somebody lost $8 million gambling in the NFL. A member of the player in the NFL last year losing $8 million for real.
Well, think about these devices we carry around with us everywhere we go,
right?
And all these little buttons and all these little apps, right? I mean, what if you spent your whole life using Twitter, and then all of a sudden you get a job after you get out of college, and there are certain ways you can use Twitter that are illegal? Like, what are you talking about? I've been using Twitter for years. So for these, I mean, it's been 5 years since the Supreme Court opened the floodgates to allow states one at a time, if they so choose, to have legalized gambling. So these DraftKings and FanDuel apps are everywhere. You've got in West Virginia, you play blackjack online. You can do all this stuff online. You hit the button and off you go. And I think that there is a culture shock for the guys who have been doing it for years. And I think that it takes more aggressive educational efforts, especially if you're going to thread this needle between players being allowed to gamble when not at work on non-NFL events and non-players being prohibited. It makes it more important to send a message the right way. And, Rich, I've heard from coaches, I've heard from people with teams who have very strong criticism about the quality of the education that the NFL is engaging in. And, look, I've been involved in the training of employees when I was practicing law. There is a fundamental difference between education for the sake of getting a piece of paper that someone signs to say they received the policy and true meaningful education aimed at getting people to understand what the rule really is. I had one coach tell me, look, this presentation's 45 minutes long. It only needs to be 5 minutes long. They overcomplicate it. The message doesn't get through to the players. The teams are left to send the message, and the smart teams are doing it. But it would be so much easier if the rule just was, hey, if you're going to play in the NFL, you have to suspend your desire to be the next great sports gambling tycoon until after you're done playing in the NFL.
I'll tell you what, man. Whoever if they send the same people who I deal with the NFL Network or the same human resources individuals, this thing would be wrapped up in 2 seconds. It's obvious.
Do you know the conspiracy theory though? Chris Sims is trying to get a spot in the top 5.
Okay.
And I think it makes sense. And the more I talk to people about it, the less it feels like a conspiracy theory. It just sounds like common sense. Mm-hmm. The sports books want the NFL to let these guys bet because they are really rich and they're young and they're dumb enough to think they're going to win. So what's going to happen? $8 million later, the sports books are making back some of the money they give to the NFL in sponsorship fees. And you know what? When Sims told me, I thought, boy, that's crazy. That's even too crazy for me. And it's like, why else would you? Why? I mean, that's the question I'd ask to the commissioner right now. If we were sitting across the table from each other, I'd say, why do you let players gamble on any sport? You have the full and complete power with the stroke of a pen to take this away.
Right.
Why are you doing it?
Yeah, I hear you.
Ask him.
Yeah, okay.
Give him a call.
It's FaceTime Roger Goodell right now.
Let's talk gambling. Hey, RG1, let's talk gambling. That's exactly what I'm going to do with my free time.
Hey, Rich, and you know what? They hate me because I keep pushing this, but I'm trying to do everybody a favor who's a stakeholder of the game because the last thing we need is a Tim Donaghy scandal.
Of course, and the league feels
some other set of facts that we don't know of. I've been trying to imagine every possible way that this could collapse on the NFL and warn people about it. And, of course, you get called Chicken Little for doing it, but somebody needs to be thinking creatively about all the bad stuff that can happen.
And you know the league doesn't want that, too. You know that. And you know that there's a lot of hand-wringing in the front offices about, nobody wants that.
But here's the problem. When you're stuffing your pockets with millions from the sports books, it's kind of hard to walk that tightrope. I mean, really, how do you have the moral authority to tell people what to do and what not to do when you got your – what was it? It was 7 exclusive sportsbook partners a couple of years ago. I mean, they're taking every dollar they can, and they got every right to do it, but it makes it hard to be properly concerned about the other side of the equation. I think it would be a lot easier for the league to fend off the potential wolves that could attack if the NFL's position was we have a clear firewall. We're not taking a dime from any of the sports books. We're not involved with this in any way. We're not going to let any of our owners own a percentage of DraftKings or FanDuel or whatever. We want nothing to do with it. I think it makes it easier to guard against all the bad stuff that can happen if you're not trying to straddle that line.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.